Before I dive into my story today, let me ask you, where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments. I'd love to know. If you enjoy stories that tug at the heart, be sure to subscribe to the channel and give this video a like. It really helps me bring more stories like this to life. Now I want to tell you about a day that began like any other, and yet ended up being unforgettable. I was sitting in the small hotel cafe, the kind where the smell of fresh coffee lingers in the air, and the morning sunlight glints off polished wooden tables. The hum of conversation surrounded me, low and comforting, a background to the quiet clatter of spoons against ceramic cups. I had traveled alone for work, a little getaway to clear my head after a particularly stressful few weeks. The city outside the large windows bustled with its usual energy, but in this cafe, the world seemed to slow just enough for me to breathe. I had just stirred the last bit of cream into my coffee when I noticed him. My nephew, Alex. It had been months since I'd seen him, and the sight of him across the room made my heart skip unexpectedly. He waved, and I waved back, a little surprised he was even here. I had known he had business nearby, but I hadn't imagined we'd cross paths in a hotel cafe miles from home. He came over slightly hesitant, carrying a tray with a cup of coffee and a muffin. His usual easy confidence seemed to have taken a pause, replaced by something softer, almost tentative. I gestured to the seat across from me, and he sat down, setting his tray down with a quiet clink. "Hey," I said, trying to sound casual, though I could feel a strange flutter in my chest. "What brings you here?" He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes the way it usually did. "I needed some time to think," he admitted. There was a pause, a moment where he looked at the floor, then back up at me, searching for the right words. "You've got that look," I said gently. "You never just need to think without something serious on your mind." Alex hesitated again, then leaned back, running a hand through his hair. "I know this might sound strange," he started, voice low, "but I felt like I could only say this here now. I need to tell you something important, and I hope you'll understand." I felt my stomach tighten, a mixture of curiosity and concern. Something about his tone made me sit a little straighter, listening more closely. He looked nervous, yet there was a quiet determination there, a vulnerability that made me instinctively want to support him. "What is it?" I asked softly, encouraging him without pushing. He took a deep breath, and for a moment, the noise of the cafe faded into nothing. The sunlight glinted off the coffee cup between us, the aroma of baked goods drifting lazily through the air. And then he spoke. The words were simple, yet they carried a weight I wasn't expecting. His confession, completely unanticipated, shook me in ways I didn't understand yet, leaving me both stunned and strangely grateful for his honesty. As he spoke, I realized this conversation was about more than just words. It was about trust, about the quiet courage it takes to share a truth that might be difficult to hear. And as the minutes stretched, I felt a deep emotional connection forming, a bond renewed in the most unexpected of ways, here in a small hotel cafe far from home. I didn't know what would happen next, but in that moment, I knew this day would stay with me forever. The cafe around us continued its steady rhythm, the soft murmur of conversations and the occasional clatter of a coffee cup creating a strangely comforting background. I watched Alex carefully, trying to read his expression. There was something earnest in his eyes, something that demanded attention without demanding anything else. I realized then that whatever he was about to share, it mattered deeply to him, and that alone was enough to hold my full focus. He took a sip of his coffee, then set the cup down with deliberate calm. "I've been struggling with a lot lately," he began, his voice almost a whisper. Not in a dramatic way, just in ways that made me rethink a lot about myself, about my choices, and even about relationships in my life. And I realized that there was something I needed to be honest about, not just to others, but to myself. I nodded, encouraging him to continue. there was no rush. The hotel cafe seemed to have a protective bubble around us, the kind of space where confessions didn't feel impossible. Outside, the city carried on with its usual clamor, but inside, it was as if time had slowed just enough for this moment to matter fully. "I know this might seem sudden," he said, his hands resting on the table. "But I needed someone I trust, and I trust you more than anyone. You've always been someone I could talk to, even when I didn't understand everything myself." I felt a wave of tenderness wash over me. This wasn't about shock or drama. It was about vulnerability. I realized I wasn't prepared to judge or react. All I wanted was to offer him the comfort of being heard. "Alex," I said gently, "thank you for trusting me. That means more than you know." He exhaled, relief washing over his features. "I was scared," he admitted. "I didn't know if telling you would change anything between us, or if I'd even be understood. But I couldn't keep it inside anymore. Pretending didn't help, and I couldn't move forward without being honest." The sunlight shifted across the table, highlighting the lines of his face in a way that made him look both older and younger at the same time. Older in the seriousness of the conversation, younger in the vulnerability he allowed himself to show. I reached across and placed a hand lightly over his, a simple gesture of support, letting him know he wasn't alone in carrying the weight of his thoughts. "I hear you, Alex," I said, "and I want you to know that being honest is the hardest but most important part of any relationship, family or otherwise. You don't have to worry about changing anything. What matters is that you felt safe enough to share this." He gave a small, almost shy smile, the tension in his shoulders easing. "It's strange," he said quietly. "I've felt so alone at times, but just saying it out loud, it's like a burden has been lifted." I nodded, understanding in a way only someone who's faced moments of quiet desperation can. There was a unique closeness in this moment, a sense of mutual respect and connection that neither of us had expected to experience in a random hotel cafe. And though the day had started as any other, I realized that some moments, brief, fleeting, honest, have the power to stay with you forever. We sat in silence after that, the kind of silence that wasn't empty, but full of understanding. Outside, the city continued its busy pace, but inside a subtle bond had been forged, a reassurance that honesty and emotional connection could bring unexpected comfort, even in the most unlikely places. After our conversation in the café, we didn't rush to leave. There was a calm that had settled between us, a gentle pause where words weren't necessary, but presence mattered deeply. I watched Alex sip his coffee, his gaze occasionally drifting toward the window, where sunlight danced on the buildings outside. For the first time in months, he seemed unburdened, and I felt a quiet sense of relief wash over me. "I've missed moments like this," he said softly, finally breaking the silence. "Not just being with family, but just talking, really talking. Life gets so busy, and we forget how much it matters to be present with people who care." I nodded, remembering my own life, filled with schedules and responsibilities, often leaving little room for genuine connection. "It's true," I said. "We spend so much time moving from one thing to the next that we forget to pause and really see each other. And sometimes it takes a moment like this to remind us why it matters." He smiled, and there was a quiet warmth in it that made the hotel café feel even more like a refuge from the outside world. For a while, we simply watched the activity outside the window, the pedestrians, the cars passing, the soft flutter of leaves from a tree across the street. It was ordinary, yet extraordinary, because we shared it together, fully attentive to one another. "Do you ever feel," he asked after a pause, "that life can be heavier than it should be? Like everyone expects us to handle everything perfectly, but no one tells us it's okay to just feel." I considered his words. They resonated with me more than I expected. "Yes," I admitted quietly. "I think we all carry more than we realize, and sometimes it takes someone brave enough to speak honestly for us to remember we're not alone." Sharing it doesn't make it lighter immediately, but it makes it bearable." Alex nodded, his eyes reflecting a mix of gratitude and contemplation. "I think that's why I wanted to talk to you," he said, "because I knew you'd listen and you'd understand. Not judge, just be there." I reached over and lightly touched his hand again, reinforcing the unspoken promise of support. "I'm here, Alex. Always." For a while, the conversation drifted to lighter topics, our families, work, and shared memories from past holidays. But even in the lighter moments, the weight of our earlier conversation lingered, not as a burden, but as a quiet understanding that had changed the way we related to one another. The café around us continued its rhythm, but we were cocooned in a space that felt ours alone, if only for that morning. As he stood to leave, there was a moment of hesitation, a silent acknowledgement that this encounter had shifted something fundamental. "Thank you," he said simply, his voice steady now, calm and resolved. "For listening, for understanding, for being you." I smiled, feeling a profound sense of connection. "And thank you for trusting me," I replied. "That matters more than you know." As I watched him walk away, I felt a mixture of reflection and growth. This encounter, unexpected and yet deeply emotional, had reminded me of the importance of honesty, empathy, and presence. Moments like this don't happen every day, but when they do, they leave a lasting imprint, shaping how we see ourselves and the people we care about. I lingered in the café a little longer, savoring the quiet, the sunlight, and the simple reminder that human connection, real, heartfelt connection, is one of life's most valuable gifts. After Alex left the café, I stayed seated for a while, letting the warmth of the sunlight and the lingering aroma of coffee settle around me. I watched people pass by outside the window, their hurried steps and casual chatter a stark contrast to the calm, almost sacred moment I had just shared. There was a quiet contentment in the realization that life, with all its unpredictability, sometimes delivers moments that matter far more than we expect. I reflected on the conversation with Alex, replaying his words in my mind. His honesty had been a revelation, not because of any dramatic confession, but because of the courage it took to speak from the heart. It reminded me that emotional courage is often quieter than we think, and sometimes it's the simplest truths that carry the greatest weight. For the first time in a long while, I felt an unspoken shift in our relationship. What had always been a close family bond had grown deeper, stronger, and more resilient. We had shared something vulnerable, something real, and it had left us both with a sense of clarity and mutual respect that didn't need to be defined or labeled. As I sipped the last of my coffee, I thought about how rare it is to find people who truly listen, who create a space where honesty is safe. Alex had given me that gift, and in return, I had been able to offer him the reassurance he needed. It was a delicate balance, a quiet dance of trust and understanding that left me feeling unexpectedly grateful. Later, walking through the hotel lobby, I noticed the little details I often overlook: the polished floors reflecting the morning light, the gentle hum of the elevator, the soft murmur of other guests passing by. Life goes on, yet within those ordinary moments, the extraordinary can quietly unfold if we allow ourselves to be present. When I finally returned to my room, I found a sense of peace I hadn't realized I was missing. The city outside continued its steady rhythm, but I carried a newfound calm inside me. I thought about the importance of connection, of being open to conversations that may feel difficult at first, and of embracing moments of vulnerability that ultimately strengthen our bonds. That day in the hotel café had started like any other, yet it had ended with an unexpected gift. A reminder that honesty, empathy, and love are the quiet forces that shape our lives in the most profound ways. I felt a renewed appreciation for the relationships that matter, for the courage it takes to share ourselves authentically, and for the subtle, beautiful ways we can grow together with the people we care about. As I closed the window curtain and looked out at the city skyline, I knew this memory would stay with me. a moment of connection and emotional discovery that had transformed a simple morning into something truly unforgettable. And in that reflection, I realized that sometimes the most meaningful journeys aren't measured in miles or destinations, but in moments of honesty, trust, and heartfelt understanding shared with someone we love.